I used to joke that my son inherited two things from me, my stubborn jaw and my work ethic. The jaw came naturally. The work ethic, I had to model every single day of his life, because after his mother left when he was 6 years old, there wasn't much else I could give him besides showing up. His name is Ryan, 21 years old, full-time student at Rowan University studying civil engineering, part-time employee at Holloway Lumber on Route 9, where he spent 3 days a week and every other Saturday moving 2x4s, pulling orders, and running a forklift with more confidence than most grown men I know. He'd been working since he was 15, first mowing lawns in our neighborhood, then bagging groceries, then the lumberyard when he turned 18 and they'd finally take him on. He never asked me for spending money, never asked me for much of anything, actually. He just figured it out and kept moving forward. I work as a general contractor. Started my own small company 14 years ago out of the back of a Ford F-150 with $1,200 and a belief that I could build things people needed. We do residential remodels, mostly kitchens, additions, the occasional full gut renovation. It's not glamorous work. My hands show every year of it. But I built something honest, and I built it from nothing, and that's a thing I will defend with my last breath. My sister married Craig Whitmore 9 years ago. Craig had made his money in commercial real estate development, strip malls mostly, then some light industrial parks outside of Raleigh. He was originally from Connecticut, went to Dartmouth, wore loafers without socks even in November, and had the particular brand of confidence that comes not from overcoming anything, but from never having had to. My sister had met him at a charity auction in Charlotte. He had bid on a weekend at a vineyard. She thought that was sophisticated. She was right about that. What she missed, at least for a long time, was that sophistication without character is just expensive packaging on an empty box. They had 2 kids. My nephew, Tyler, 17, who drove a Jeep Wrangler his father had bought him for his birthday, and who had recently been asked to repeat his junior year because of attendance. And my niece Amber, 15, who wanted to be an influencer and talked about follower counts the way my generation talked about batting averages. My sister and I had grown up in a 3-bedroom ranch house in Glassboro, New Jersey. Our father drove a delivery truck for 30 years. Our mother worked the desk at a dental office. We weren't poor, but every dollar had a destination. My sister had worked hard, gotten a scholarship, built a real career in marketing before she met Craig. Somewhere along the way, after moving into his world, she'd started borrowing his values without noticing. The call came on a Tuesday evening in late November. I was sitting at my kitchen table going over material quotes when my phone lit up with her name. "You're still planning on coming Thursday, right? Thanksgiving at the new house? We want everyone there." "Of course. Ryan and I will be there. We'll bring the pies." A pause, long enough that I noticed. "About Ryan?" Craig was wondering, and this is just a logistical thing, not a big deal at all, but Craig's mother is flying in from Greenwich, and we have the Harrington family coming, the Delacroix from the club, and a few people from Craig's investment group. We're going to have maybe 34 people, and it's the first Thanksgiving in the new house. So Craig really wants everything to look a certain way. I waited. "Ryan works at that lumberyard, right? Still?" "Yes, he does. It's just that Craig's worried about the furniture. The dining chairs are custom, white linen upholstery. Craig had them shipped from a place in Savannah. And you know how lumber work is. The dust, the smell. Craig just doesn't want anything stained before we've even had our first dinner party." I set down my pen very carefully. "Are you telling me my son isn't welcome at your Thanksgiving table because he works at a lumberyard? It's not like that." Craig just thought if Ryan came from his shift, maybe he could wait in the sunroom until after dinner. It's heated. There's a television in there. It's really comfortable. "I'll tell him we'll be there at 2, I said. And I hung up. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept turning it over. The sunroom. Like my son was a muddy dog you put in a different room when company came. I thought about calling back, telling her we weren't coming. I almost did. But Ryan had been asking about Thanksgiving for 2 weeks. He'd talked about Aunt Sandra's sweet potato casserole, about wanting to show Tyler the photos from his last site project. He'd even bought Craig a bottle of bourbon from a small Kentucky distillery he'd read about, saved up for it specifically. I didn't tell him about the conversation. I told myself I was protecting him. Looking back now, I think I was also protecting myself from having to make a decision I wasn't ready to make yet. Thanksgiving morning, Ryan worked a half shift. He was home by noon, showered, changed into a button-down flannel and dark jeans. He'd gotten a haircut the day before. He stood in the kitchen looking clean and decent and proud of himself in the quiet way he always carried himself, and my chest tightened. He held up the bourbon. "Think Craig will like this?" Guy at the liquor store said it's supposed to be really good. Wheated mash, aged 8 years. "Craig will love it," I said. We drove the 40 minutes to Cherry Hill, where my sister and Craig had built their house 2 years ago. 7,000 square feet of modern farmhouse aesthetic black window frames, white shiplap, a front porch wide enough to land a small aircraft. The driveway alone was longer than my street. Catering vans were parked along the side of the house. 2 women in black uniforms were carrying trays of something from a van to the side entrance. Ryan let out a low whistle. "New house is something else." "Yeah, it is." We parked behind a line of luxury SUVs. Ryan grabbed the pies from the back seat. I grabbed the bourbon. We walked to the front door, and I rang the bell. And for just a second standing there, I thought maybe I'd misjudged everything. Maybe it would be fine. Maybe Craig would shake Ryan's hand and pour him a drink, and everything I'd imagined would turn out to be nothing. The door opened. My sister stood there in a cashmere sweater, pearl earrings, her hair blown out like she was going to a television appearance. She hugged me first, then she looked at Ryan. And it was only a fraction of a second, a flicker, but I caught it. The assessment, eyes going to his boots. "Ryan, sweetheart, you look great." She hugged him. "Did you come straight from work?" "No, ma'am. Home first. Showered and everything." He smiled. He had no idea. "That's good. Listen, before we go in, Craig's just the chairs in the dining room. His mother is seated in there, and some of the guests are arriving. He wanted me to ask if you'd mind starting in the sunroom, just until we do the main meal. There's a bar cart in there, and I set up a little appetizer spread on the coffee table." Ryan went still. Not in a dramatic way, just still. The way he got when something landed that he wasn't expecting and he was deciding how to handle it. He started to say it was fine. I could see it forming on his face, that thing he always did, that thing I'd watched him do his whole life, swallow the discomfort to make everyone else comfortable. I put my hand on his arm. "Actually," I said, "Ryan's with me." My sister's smile held, but her eyes went uncertain. "What?" "He's with me. Where I sit, he sits. That's how it works." She glanced behind her toward the interior of the house. "Craig's inside. He's going to want to." "Lead the way," I said. The house was full, 30-something people in the kind of linen and cashmere you don't buy at normal stores. A string quartet had been set up in the corner of the great room, actual musicians, playing actual instruments, at a Thanksgiving dinner. The dining room table was set with china I would have been afraid to touch. Flower arrangements taller than my son. Candles everywhere. The whole thing had the energy of a performance rather than a meal. Craig appeared from across the room. He was tall, silver at the temples, the kind of handsome that photographs well and means less in person. He shook my hand firmly. "Good to see you." He looked at Ryan. "Ryan, glad you could make it." He said it the way you'd say it to someone who'd arrived uninvited. Ryan handed him the bourbon. "Got you something." Red, it was a good one. Craig held the bottle, looked at the label briefly. "Oh, sure, thanks." He handed it to a passing caterer without looking at it again. I watched Ryan watch that happen. Craig pulled me slightly aside, the way men do when they want to have a conversation without including someone standing 3 feet away. "We've got some important people here today. The Harringtons are potential partners on the Raleigh project. I just need everything to feel a certain way. You understand." "I understand more than you think," I said. "There's a beautiful spread set up in the sunroom. Big screen, comfortable sectional. Ryan would probably be more comfortable in there anyway. Less stuffy. Ryan's going to sit with me," I said again, and I said it at a volume that didn't leave much room. Craig's jaw tightened. He smiled with his teeth. "Fine. Of course." He said it the way people say fine when they mean the opposite of fine. We moved through the great room. I kept Ryan close. People glanced at us the way you glance at someone wearing the wrong thing at the right party, not hostile, just noting. I introduced Ryan to 2 people who asked. He shook hands, made eye contact, answered questions about school with ease. He was better at it than I was. Tyler found us near the bar. He was taller than I remembered. He and Ryan did one of those half-hug handshakes the way cousins do when they like each other but don't want to seem like they do. "Yin yo, how's the lumberyard?" Tyler asked. "Good money," Ryan said. You should apply. I can put in a word. Tyler laughed. Hard pass. My dad would lose his mind. Your dad's loss, Ryan said, and grinned. They talked for a few minutes. Tyler was the one person in that house who seemed genuinely glad Ryan was there. And I noted that. Amber passed by once, looked at Ryan, looked away, kept walking, didn't say a word. Dinner was announced at 4. We moved to the dining room in a procession of expensive fabric and cocktail conversation. Place cards at every seat. Mine was toward the far end, 2 chairs from the corner. Ryan's card was not at the table at all. I looked twice to be sure. 34 place cards for 34 people, and my son's name was not among them. I walked to where my sister was, directing people to their seats. There's no place card for Ryan. She lowered her voice. Craig thought it would actually be less awkward. With the Harringtons right there, just for dinner. The sunroom has a full. I picked up 2 place cards from the far end of the table. Moved Ryan and myself to 2 empty seats in the middle. Beside what I could see were the Harrington family seats. My sister touched my arm. Those are reserved. For family? I asked. For guests. Ryan is a guest, I said. And he's family. Pick one. She went to find Craig. I stood at those 2 seats and didn't move. Ryan stood beside me, quiet. He hadn't said a word. I could feel him deciding whether to tell me to let it go. Dad, he said, low enough for just me. Don't, I said. He was quiet. Craig appeared, controlled, smiling for the room. He bent close. I need you to understand the situation here. I need you to understand mine, I said. My son sits with me, or we leave right now, and you can explain to your caterers where to send the bill for the food we won't be eating. Something shifted in his face. The smile didn't disappear, but something behind it recalculated. He straightened. Fine. He walked away. We sat. Dinner began. Salad course, then soup, then the kind of food that gets described on a catering menu in words that require translation. The conversation around us was a specific kind of noise vacation homes and private school decisions, and a 45-minute discussion about which SUV had the best third-row seating for private air travel logistics. I nodded when it seemed appropriate. Ryan ate quietly and answered when anyone spoke to him, which was infrequently. Mrs. Harrington, seated directly across from Ryan, asked him what he studied. He told her civil engineering. She raised her eyebrows with what seemed like genuine interest. Where? Rowan, full-time. I work weekends at a lumberyard to cover it. Her husband, without looking up from his plate, said something that I replayed in my mind several times to make sure I'd heard it correctly. A lumberyard. Good Lord. Does the university not have work-study programs? Ryan said evenly. I prefer actual work. Mr. Harrington looked up then, smiled the way people smile when they think they're being generous. Good for you. Still, there are better options for someone in your program. Internships, research positions, things that look right on a resume. Lumber work as well. He waved his fork vaguely. Ryan opened his mouth. I got there first. My son was offered an internship last summer at an engineering firm in Philadelphia, I said. He turned it down because it paid $12 an hour and wouldn't cover his tuition. The lumberyard pays $22.50 and lets him schedule around his classes. He made that decision with a spreadsheet and a clear head, which is more than most people at this table would have done at 21. The table went quiet in the way that happens when someone raises their voice at a volume slightly above what the setting calls for. Not yelling, but enough. Craig, from his seat at the head of the table, said smoothly, "Why don't we keep the conversation a little lighter? It's Thanksgiving." "You're right," I said. "It is Thanksgiving. So let me say what I'm thankful for." I stood up. The chair legs on the hardwood made a sound that carried. Every conversation at the table stopped. 30-some-odd people looked at me. "I'm thankful for my son," I said, "who has worked since he was 15 years old, who has never once asked me to pay for anything he could earn himself, who maintains a 3.8 GPA while working 30 hours a week, who bought your husband a bottle of bourbon he saved up for because he wanted to make a good impression on family who has never once made one on him." My sister said my name. I looked at Craig. "I'm thankful I'm not the kind of man who sends his nephew to eat in a different room because he doesn't like the way lumber smells. I'm thankful I'm not the kind of man who removes someone's place card from the table because their job isn't impressive enough for the people he's trying to impress. I'm thankful my son knows who he is without needing a single person in this room to confirm it. I looked at my sister then. She was not looking at me. She was looking at the centerpiece. "You've been to our house 100 times," I said to her. "You know who raised this kid. You know what it took. And you let Craig put him in the sunroom." I wasn't done. I should have been, probably, but I wasn't. "Your son, Tyler," I said to Craig, "is repeating his junior year. I heard that from my sister in September. Your daughter Amber failed her biology final, and you had her teacher's grade reviewed by the school board because Craig Whitmore's daughter does not fail things. And I know about the attendance record, the 3 weekends in a row at someone's beach house in the Outer Banks during the school year. Because my sister tells me things she doesn't tell you, she tells me. So while my son is running a forklift and studying structural load calculations, yours are doing what, exactly, that makes them the right kind of people to sit at this table." The room was the kind of quiet that has texture to it. Craig stood. His voice was very controlled. "I think you should leave. I think you're right." I looked at Ryan. He was looking at me with an expression I hadn't seen on his face before. It wasn't embarrassment. It wasn't anger. It was something that took me a second to name. Relief. Like something he'd been holding for a long time had just been set down. I picked up my napkin from my lap, folded it, placed it on the table. The bourbon was still sitting on the bar cart across the room where Craig had set it down. 8-year wheated mash. I walked over, picked it up, tucked it under my arm. "My son bought this for someone who didn't deserve it. We got our coats from the front closet." My sister came after us into the entryway. Her voice was low and strained. "You made a scene in front of Craig's investors. You put my son in a sunroom." She didn't have an answer for that. "You remember Dad?" I said. "How he smelled when he came home from the truck? Diesel and cardboard and that hand soap he kept in the cab, and how Mom never once acted like that was anything other than the smell of a man doing what he needed to do." She looked at the floor. "That's who we came from," I said, "and one of us forgot." We drove home. Ryan was quiet for the first 15 minutes. I didn't push. The highway was mostly empty, late afternoon sky going gray and orange at the edges. The kind of sky that makes November feel almost beautiful if you're in the right frame of mind. Finally, he said, "You didn't have to do that." "Yeah, I did." The Harrington guy was a jerk. "Yeah, he was. You didn't have to say all of it, though." "The stuff about Tyler and Amber." He was quiet for a moment. "Actually, yeah, you did." He laughed. "A real one. The kind he got from his mother." I exhaled something I'd been holding since Tuesday night. "You okay?" I asked. "Better than okay." He was quiet again. "Dad, how long has Craig been like that to me?" I kept my eyes on the road. "A while." "How many Thanksgivings has Aunt Sandra let him?" I didn't answer, because the answer was all of them. He thought about that. "I used to think it was me," he said. "Like maybe I was doing something wrong. Being too loud or too much, or I don't know. Not the right fit for their house." "It was never you. I know that now. I think I knew it, but it's different hearing someone else say it out loud in front of 30 people. We stopped at a diner on the way back, sat in a corner booth and ordered turkey dinners off the laminated menu, the kind with the gravy that comes in a separate little boat and the stuffing that's more bread than anything else. The waitress called us hun and refilled our coffees without being asked. Ryan left her a tip that was bigger than the meal. He always did. We didn't hear from my sister or Craig that week, or the week after. A month into the new year, I got an email from Craig's assistant, his assistant, not Craig himself, noting that the centerpiece Ryan had apparently brushed against when we left had damaged a floral arrangement that cost $400, and they would appreciate reimbursement. I sat with that email for 2 days. Then I called my own sister, not Craig, and I told her that if Craig wanted to pursue this, I would be happy to provide documentation of the conversation she and I had on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, the one about the sunroom and the linen dining chairs, and I would be very willing to share that documentation with the Harringtons and the Delacroix and anyone else in Craig's investment network who might find it interesting that a man running a multi-million-dollar development project thought it was appropriate to exclude his nephew from a family holiday because of what the boy did for work. The email about the $400 was never mentioned again. Spring arrived. Ryan finished his semester with straight A's in every class. He'd applied for a summer internship with a civil engineering firm in Trenton, a real one, union-affiliated, good pay, meaningful work. He got it. Called me from the lumberyard parking lot on his lunch break. I could hear in his voice that he'd been hoping for it but hadn't let himself count on it, and now that it was real, he didn't know quite what to do with the size of the feeling. I drove to meet him after his shift. We sat in the parking lot of a Wawa, and I bought him a sandwich and a large coffee, and he talked for 45 minutes about the projects the firm was doing, the infrastructure contracts, what he might be working on. I nodded and asked questions and mostly just listened because there are moments in your child's life when your only job is to be the audience. My sister called in March. Not about Craig, at least not at first. She called the way she used to when we were kids, and she needed to talk to someone who already knew everything. Craig had a partner on the Raleigh project, she said. Someone he'd brought in 2 years ago. Turns out the partner had been misrepresenting the financing to investors. Diverting funds. The details were complicated and got worse every time a lawyer explained them. Craig hadn't done it himself, but he'd missed it, or maybe hadn't looked hard enough. And now his name was attached to a situation that was going to take years and a great deal of money to untangle. His investors, including the Harringtons, had pulled out. There was a silence on the line. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "Are you?" she asked. "Yeah, I am. Not for Craig, for you." She started crying then, the kind that's been building for a long time. I didn't try to fix it. I just stayed on the line. After a while, she said, "I let him do that to Ryan." "Yes, you did. I didn't know how to stop it without losing him." "I know. Was I wrong? About which one to lose?" I let her sit in that question. "That's yours to answer," I said finally. "Not mine." She came to visit in April. Without Craig. She brought Tyler and Amber, which surprised me. Amber was different than I remembered, quieter, less performative. She'd started a school photography project that had won something at a regional arts fair, and she showed me on her phone with the kind of shyness that meant it actually mattered to her. I told her it was genuinely good. She seemed like she believed me. Tyler spent most of the afternoon talking to Ryan. Ryan walked him through the engineering firm project, showed him some of the site survey software on his laptop. Tyler was better at it than he expected to be. He asked questions that showed he was paying attention. On his way out, he said to Ryan, "Seriously, can you help me look at summer jobs?" Ryan said he could put in a word at Holloway Lumber. Tyler said, "Yeah, okay, yeah." My sister and I sat on the back porch while the kids were inside. The afternoon was the particular kind of quiet you get in April when it's finally warm enough to sit outside but not warm enough to need anything. "I owe Ryan an apology," she said. "Yeah, you do. Will he? Is he angry?" I thought about it honestly. He's not really an angry person. He's more disappointed, maybe. But he doesn't hold things the way some people do. "Like Mom," she said. "Like Mom." She looked out at the yard. "Craig and I are separating." She said it without drama. "Just put it down." I didn't say anything for a moment. "I'm sorry. I don't know if I am yet." She said that honestly. "I don't know if I'm sorry or just scared. Those can both be true." She nodded. "I need to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to fit into his version of things." She paused. "I used to know. I knew who I was in Glassboro. I knew what mattered. You still know. You just set it down for a while." She said Ryan's name. Just that, like a full sentence. "I know," I said. Ryan forgave her. Not all at once, and not without conditions. He was clear that he needed to see her show up consistently and differently, not just apologize and expect everything to reset. She accepted that. She came to his internship presentation at the end of the summer, drove 2 hours for a 40-minute student showcase in a conference room, and when it was over, she hugged him and said she was proud of him and he let her, which was its own kind of answer. He finished his degree the following May, graduated with departmental honors. There was a moment at the ceremony, right after he crossed the stage, when he held up the diploma and looked out into the seats looking for me. And when he found me, he grinned exactly the way he did when he was 7 years old and learned to ride a bike without training wheels in a single afternoon because he decided he was going to, and then he did. I am 53 years old. My hands have a permanent set of lines from years of physical work, and there are mornings my lower back registers its objections before I'm fully awake. I have built things I can point to actual structures, rooms that didn't exist before I put them there, a house I own outright, a business that has my name on it, and has survived things I didn't think we'd survive. None of it is the thing I am most proud of. The thing I am most proud of is a 22-year-old man who drove a forklift and studied load-bearing equations and bought an 8-year bourbon for a man who didn't deserve it and who sat in a sunroom he didn't belong in because he didn't want to make things difficult. Who learned that night in a dining room full of people who had a great deal and valued it wrong that his father would stand up for him even when it cost something. Who turned around one afternoon and forgave his aunt because that's the kind of person he chose to be, regardless of what was modeled for him. Ryan started his first full-time position with a structural engineering firm in Philadelphia in June. He still works hard, still stays humble. He got coffee from the shop in his building lobby his first week and left a $5 tip on a $4 order because he's been on the other side of a counter and he remembers what that feels like. He calls me on Sunday evenings. We talk about the projects he's on, about Tyler, who is now working weekends at a hardware store and has apparently discovered he actually likes physical work, about my sister who is finding her way back to something real, about all of it. There is a thing I understood that Thanksgiving that I want to say clearly, because I think some people need to hear it the way I needed to say it in that dining room with the good china and the string quartet, and the people who thought the value of a human being was determined by the cost of the chair they sat in. Your child is watching you, not just when you stand up in the obvious moments. They are watching how you respond when standing up will cost you something. When the person you need to stand up to is someone whose approval you want or whose money you respect or whose opinion you've let matter more than it should. They are watching whether you stay seated or whether you get up. Get up. Whatever it costs you, get up. Because the thing they carry from that moment isn't the drama of it, isn't the room going quiet or the place cards being moved or whatever metaphorical champagne tower you knock over on your way out. What they carry is the knowledge that when it mattered, you chose them. You chose them without hesitation. You chose them at the table and you chose them walking out and you chose them in the diner afterward with the thin-cut turkey and the too sweet gravy and the waitress who called you hun. That's the thing that lasts. That's the thing they build themselves on. And in my experience, it turns out to be exactly enough.